Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Deck Tech. Today, Sultai Rogues. Last week was Team of Rogues, revisiting my favorite rogue shells. In Modern, it's the end of the year. I did it last year at the end of the year, so I figure it's good timing, almost 12 months. Today, Sultai Rogues, swapping red for black, essentially. Trying to keep the same rogue shell, but getting into black gives us a lot more access to efficient removal. But before I get into the list and everything like that, as usual, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down below and that like button as well. It's really the only button that's left. The dislike button, I guess, really doesn't do anything anymore. And hit that notification bell as well. All those clicks really go a long way in helping others find my channel. I really appreciate your support. Okay, so let's take a look at the list. If you watched my Team of Rogues deck tech last week, a lot of these cards are going to look pretty familiar to you. Fairy Miscreant, Traverse, Elven Wall, Tarmogoyf, so on and so forth. So what's really changed here is that we now have access to black, no more red, so no bolts or anything like that. Delirium is hurt just a tad because of that, because we don't have access to Seal of Fire or Tar of Fire, but that's okay. Thieves Guild Enforcer and Soaring Thought Thief come into the mix here, which really help us devote more resources or more of the deck to, you know, milling our opponent. Although this is not a mill deck and we're not trying to mill our opponent necessarily, milling our opponent does have the nice effect of boosting our creature's power and toughness, and also getting rid of some cards that our opponent would have otherwise cast against us. So that's always a nice thing to have. Of course, it also feeds the Tarmogoyf, which is something that we always want to do. Everything else stays more or less the same. We now have Fatal Push, now Bolt, Counterspell, Force of Negation are still there in some numbers. So not too much changes, except that, you know, we're swapping some cards to make up for red not being a thing. The mana base also changes accordingly. So the strategy overall, though, is really tempo, aggro, some permission, so tempo basically, but a bit more synergy with the creature. So let's get to the synergies here. Since you are playing black and you have access to Soaring Thought Thief and Thieves Guild Enforcer, they all work a lot better together, all of your rogues in general. Fairy Miscreant gets a bit better because it triggers Thieves Guild Enforcer and Soaring Thought Thief, so same with Obsessive Skinner and Suspicious Stowaway. And of course, Thieves Guild Enforcer and Soaring Thought Thief help each other as well, or at least synergize well with each other. So I would say the synergy in Sultai Rogues is definitely a bit stronger because you're just playing more rogues. And these rogues have been selected because they tend to play very well together in this deck. So this is your starring cast essentially of creatures. The only other creature that you have here that's not a rogue is Tarmogoyf, and it's really just because you're playing green and there's no reason not to play Tarmogoyf, especially in a deck like this where you're filling up graveyards. Another thing to notice here is that we're playing Lurrus of the Dream Den as our companion, so that's taking up the 15th slot in our sideboard. I mean, really just a nice mid to late game card to cast and at least get one of your rogues back, give you a bit more play, you know, in the late game. Hopefully gives you that edge in winning the game, helping you get that one last trigger that you needed from a rogue entering the battlefield or attacking to win the game. And it has some life, you know, it has life link, so it gives you some life gain as well if you have to block or attack with it. So I really, since we could play Lurrus, it would be silly not to play Lurrus. It's just, you know, that's how broken companions are. So there you have it. Now the matchups, as always, so let's go through them. Not too different from Team of Rogues, but I have changed some of my opinions of these matchups. Combo still relatively even. Mid-range, I think, is a bit better with Sultai Rogues just because the removal is a bit more efficient. Fatal Push being what I'm talking about here. You don't have to worry too much about damage-based removal. And of course, you know, your sideboard can be tweaked accordingly to have better black removal as opposed to red removal. Your aggro matchup is more or less still even. Now, the control matchup I've noticed has become unfavored with Sultai Rogues. And, you know, from all the matches that I've had, I think it's really come down to lack of reach. When you have access to red and Team of Rogues, you have Lightning Bolt, Tar Fire, Seal of Fire, which in the control matchups, you know, go straight to your opponent's face as opposed to creatures that your opponents are casting. In Sultai Rogues, you don't have that extra firepower, so you're relying a lot more on your creatures, and you're relying a lot more on the synergy of your creatures. And because, you know, control decks tend to be playing a lot of removal, and that's like their game plan, removal and permission, it just becomes a lot harder to make things click and close out the games quickly. So that's you know, my experience with control decks has really gone downhill with Sultai Rogues. Tron, I still believe, is favored. You have a lot of removal. You have a lot of access to removal. that's relatively efficient and can pretty much target anything. So Tron just really not happy with you. You don't have Blood Moon, but you do have Spreading Seas and Assassin's Trophy, so that's all well and good. And Borderline Magic, I think most of those decks you have pretty good game against. Again, you have a lot more efficient removal or non-conditional removal in terms of damage. So I think the Borderline Magic matchups have improved. And that is it for Sultai Rogues. There'll be 4 matchups going up today as usual, so stay tuned for those. And of course, I'd love to hear your opinions down below. There's one more deck left, Esper Rogues, which I've been struggling to make work. It's actually my first time getting into it, but you'll see more in next week's Deck Tech. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy my content in general, please subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. Those few clicks go a really long way in helping others find my content and helps my channel grow. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, share my content on social media. That also helps others find their way to my videos and spreads the word even further. And of course, if you like making money, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of this video. In particular, check out the Patreon Rewards program. Basically works like this. You give me your Patreon dollars every month. I buy and open up sealed product on this channel using those dollars. And I send you back that money at the end of every year in the form of rares and mythics. You get 1 non-bulk rare or mythic for every consecutive month you've been a patron, and every card is worth anywhere between $3 and $15. But I mean, even if you lowball it at an average of $5 per card, you're at the very least getting your money back, but odds are you're getting even more. There are a lot more details on my Patreon page, so check it out. Thanks and have a good one.